Welcome back. Today we're going to start the quilt that I've been talking about called Jacob's Ladder, which is the quilt block for it. I dug into my book vault with the magazines and all the things to find a very simple pattern. So I pulled something out from who knows when. It's very old, obviously it's falling apart. And this is the simplest Jacob's Ladder with the pieces already there. There's two ways to go about this. One, trace your pieces and add that 1/4 of an inch seam with your ruler around it and then cut those out. Or you can do it like me and measure your blocks, put the 1/4 inch seam on there, and then do the strips that are so much faster, which is what we're going to do. So if we actually did the blocks according to all this, we would have a 72 by 84. I'm using scraps. It's probably not going to be near that big, but we're going to see where we go. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to work on the triangles, because that's the fabric that I had on top of my iron stack. And so what we started with is a 4-inch triangle from here to there. So I can't do math. I traced it out, put my quarters on there, and we came up with 4 7/8. So I'm gonna come here with my scrap fabric that I have from who knows what, and we're going to do our strips like we've been doing. And this is the simplest way to do triangles, as I told you before. Make sure all that cut. Then 4 7/8. Ooh, be really cutting it close there. Actually, nope, that one side's not gonna work for us, but we'll take what we can at this point and use the rest. And now we have our triangles that will fit at least part of them. What I'm going to do is actually do 2 tones with them, because in our diagram it shows the 2 tones. So one of those is going to be the white ones. And it's easy to keep track of how many you have when you cut like this also, because typically, except for our off ones right here, typically I fold it twice, so it's going to give you 4 squares or blocks. But then when you're doing triangles, when you cut those in half, it turns into 8. So if you had to do 64, just make you a little stack of 8 at a time. And it's easy. Then when you're sitting there trying to figure out how many you've cut, you're like, okay, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, that kind of thing. Especially if you're actually paying attention to how many you need, instead of just using up all your scraps like I am. But when I go to figure out how many blocks I have, I'll take the least number of squares or triangles that I have, count those, and divide all the rest of them up. Okay, so the next thing is our squares. This, we're going to also use our strips. Some of these are already nice and cut in strips, but they're not the size that I need. So, unfortunately, I'm going to pull out this ruler, and we're going to leave them in strips, because since they're just 2 blocks, we're just going to sew a couple of strips together, cut them up, go from there. Super simple. And our block is going to be 2.5. So So the first thing we do is we get us 2.5 inch strip going. And now it's ready to be sewn with our next one. This is going to be, like I said, scrap piece. So we're just going to take a bunch of little strips and piece them together. It's great for leftover projects. Actually, I've already made a quilt with these. It was a very simple quilt too. It was very fun. Apparently my blade is going dull on me. I'm not cutting all the way through. And there's the next one. Granted, these two probably won't be up next to each other. I have some plain that I'm going to mix in with this to kind of give it a little less chaotic look. I'm very bad about making very chaotic quilts, apparently, or so I've been told. I like patterns on my fabric. So right now we're just going to start making strips, putting them up here and seeing where we get. Okay, so now that we have our triangles and our strips ready, we're ready for the first phase, which is going to be sewing all of this together. As if you haven't noticed, I have two different colors here because I quickly realized that my white definitely outweighs my print that I was going to use. So I counted them up and it worked out to where they're even numbers. I like even numbered blocks because then you can arrange them easier. And then the green is to offset my prints with here, and we're going to just mix those up in a hodgepodge of ways. So first thing we're going to do, and actually I do have an odd number. I'm going to take an odd number out. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is just sew all this together. Simplest thing. Set out a bunch. Line them up with their pairs. Hit that quarter. You'll notice mine line up a lot better than the scrap quilt that I just did. The lines are a little straighter. Anyway, we're just gonna go. Half our squares there. Not half our square, but our first little square is part of the bigger square. And a lot of times what I like to do is, this is part of the reason why I set several up at a time, is I like to just run them through, keep a nice even rhythm going. And then after I do a long string of them, go through here, clip, clip, easy as pie, stack them all up. And when I'm done with that part, I'll go over and iron them out all nice and neat. Anyway, let's skip over here real quick before we get into a huge ordeal. Green may be more than what I got cut with my prints, but that's fine. I've got plenty of prints over here I can use. This little quarter right here is cut, so I'm going to put my salvage edge up close to that. And this one, what we're going to do is, because one's on top, one's on bottom, and it's really only going to matter if your print's going one way. So on one of the flamingos, I'll make sure to sew it on this side. On the next flamingo, I'll put it on the bottom. Or I may mix them up and not even care, actually, at this point. But when you have a print, sometimes with the squares the way they are, like in this, when you have a light one, a dark one, a dark one, a light one, if you have a print going one way that needs to be going one way so it's not really noticeable that it's different, you're going to want to put, when you're doing your strips, you're going to put one on the bottom, one on the top, and alternate your rows as you go that way. Like I said, in this instance, I don't think it's going to matter because we're just going to scramble them anyway when we're done. So. Then you're going to go through the rest of your stack just like that. And you have half of your squares done.